Hello everybody and welcome to the UK and Ireland Radical Race Season finale. Yes, it's round 12 already and we're headed to the Nurburgring, most promptly, the Nordschleife and only the Nordschleife. We're not having any of this combined nonsense, no GP loop, even though I prefer the GP loop, but either way, I'll refrain from complaining too much. My name is Jack Oliphant and I'm joined alongside me, as ever on the Radical Race series, by Ed May. Ed, how the devil are you?
And it's good to be here for the season finale of the UK and Ireland Radical Race Series. Do you know what, Jack? It's the Nordschleife, of course, the circuit that you and I will have remembered from our time commentating on the, I think it was VLN, haven't we? We've commentated on a few rounds of various championships together here, and now it's home to the Radicals, and it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they could go around the Nordschleife. Because what was it in GT3s? They could take lap times. Was it just under 8 minutes, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I thought it was lower than that, to be honest. I thought it was about high 5 minutes, maybe low 6 minutes, but I could be wrong. But yeah, by the looks of these guys out there at the moment, they're lapping in the low 6 minutes. But before we get into all of that, there is worth noting we've gone live 5 minutes later than we have done. Well, we started talking 5 minutes later than we usually do because we're under the impression that these drivers aren't doing a qualifying session. If anybody's usually used to watching the UK and Ireland Radical Race Series, you'll know that they do a sort of the iRacing norm in terms of qualifying. They do 3 flying laps over the course of 10 minutes. Well, if you do 3 flying laps, it'll take you a lot longer than 10 minutes to do around the Nordschleife. Even their outlap would take about 7 minutes, so it's not really worth having, I suppose. So I can understand their decision to just ban off qualifying, but we're not entirely sure what grid we're going to be turning up with, Ed, are we?
No, we are. I think it could either be based on this sort of long practice session or maybe even based on iRacing's sort of iRating system. So the drivers with the highest iRating will be starting at the front and then trickling down as the iRating decreases. But currently, as you can see on track, top of the timing sheets is Simon Edwards, who's put in a very strong 6-minute 15.1. About 8 tenths quicker than Paul Crabb, but over just over 6 minute lap. If you're on a conventional racing circuit, that gap would be very close indeed. So don't count out Paul Crabb in this race, or even Dan Webster for that matter. A little bit off the pace is Dan, but Paul Crabb and Simon Edwards really on the pace here this evening.
Yeah, if you're sort of breaking it up by sectors, here at the Nurburgring, iRacing give us a breakdown of the Nordschleife of 10 sectors here for one singular lap around the Nordschleife. So realistically, if you're looking at Simon Edwards and Paul Crabb, it's about 8 tenths of a second. That means each sector is less than a tenth of a second difference between the top 2, which is quite mad when you sort of put it like that. It's about 30 seconds per sector. So each sector here is equivalent to about a lap of the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. So that sort of puts it into perspective. And they're less than a tenth of a second away from each other, each lap of the Brands Hatch Indy circuit. That's sort of a bit of a simple way of putting it, but it sort of helps maybe help you picture it a little bit better. We also have, obviously, people quicker in different sectors than others as well, because obviously the entire place is just a complete and utter mind melt, isn't it? Ed, you've raced here a lot.
Yeah.
I've only commentated around the Nurburgring because I can't stand driving it. I just get lost half the time. But you really do have to concentrate for the full entirety of the lap.
Yeah, especially through here, the fast sector just coming through now. I think that was what we referred to as miss, hit, miss. But for me, it's miss, miss, miss. You miss every single apex and scream as you barrel towards one of the slower corners on the circuit. That left hand that we just saw Simon Edwards negotiate coming through this corner, really send it through, careful of the exit because the wall's surprisingly close. Then here, when you're going uphill, you can send a lot of speed in and use the elevation to keep the car hunkered down and keep the power down, because you've got decently long straight before the next corner, the all-important right-hander onto the next long flat-out section. Simon Edwards, it's a good drive out of it, and then it's a long drive up the hill for a bit of a rest of your brain. You can somewhat relax for a moment before you come now up towards what we tend to call Bravery Corner. Just this next left-hander coming up, I think, where you do need to be very brave indeed. Just absolutely send it through. I'm not sure what these radicals will be like. Coming up to it now. Here we come. Sending it through. Really just trying to get the car onto the limits, and it isn't too much actually for someone else to worry about. You could just send it through. No problem. And then, Jack, we're going to come up to one of the corners of the Nordschleife, the iconic picture that you see cars going through the carousel, sending it into the corner now, just getting into that groove. You can see hooking it through the camber, but he gets spat out. So Simon Edwards, unlucky there, just to carry a bit too much speed in, a little bit too much of a bump as well. These cars are very stiff, and unfortunately gets spat out of the corkscrew and decides that's it for practice, because we've just ticked over past 2 hours. The checkered flag is waving, and the drivers are going to get started in the race.
Yeah, I just hope that they've put it on the setup that once they cross the line, they've only got about 30 seconds to complete the lap. Because if we're waiting for everybody to, there we go, thankfully. So if we were waiting for everybody to finish the lap there, it would have been an absolute nightmare. But we can finally have a look at what's to come in terms of the grid. This has been a complete mystery to us as commentators and you guys at home, I'm sure, as well. But by the looks of it, they are pretty much going on championship order, potentially even practice order. Simon Edwards top of the times with Paul Crabb alongside him in the first row of the grid. Martin Booker and Mike Busson are 3rd and 4th, with Dan Webster and James Child 5th and 6th. Paul Clark and Paul LeMay are 7th and 8th, with Phil Glover and Ray Peasley in 9th and 10th. Phil Jocelyn and Martina Ward are 11th and 12th, and we haven't got that many drivers below them, to be fair. We got Jamie Bird, Michael LeMay, and Dominic Lang-Webb, yet again starting right at the back of the field. We can't seem to see anything from our normal angle here, and that just goes to show Ed how low these radicals really are. I'll try and get an eye on them. There we go. We can finally see what's going to be cracking on as soon as they start the race. Because of course we are on the non-GP start-finish line, which doesn't even look like a GP's finish line.
Yeah, just the Nordschleife for the Northern Loop. Look at all the cars towards the back. Because, well, they're going to be starting on the bend, but we're going to have a look for Simon Edwards. The engine lights are rising. You can hear the cars revving their engines and getting ready to start the final race of the season. It's a good start from Simon Edwards into the first corner. Around the outside, look at this. Martin Booker's absolutely sent it on Paul Crabb. Great overtake there from the 72 to get up ahead as they come through for the first time through Hudson back. And you know what? We've seen a relatively clean start here this evening.
We have indeed, yeah, a couple of drivers nice and close to each other, but all giving each other really nice respect. 5 laps here, and anybody out there who's good at maths with a 6-minute lap time, 5 laps, you're probably looking at just over 30 minutes of racing, which may be a touch longer than we're used to, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. The crucial thing for this, Ed, I suppose, we've seen it a lot. The racing might get spaced out, but even if you have a bit of a wobble early on, there's every opportunity that other drivers will have a wobble later on. Such a hard track, such a long race, we see people making mistakes all the time because it's a very unforgiving circuit.
Yeah, it does have a penchant for providing us with some late drama, some misfortune maybe coming the way of certain drivers should they make a mistake, like we've just seen Martin Booker do, locking up and running wide, and all of a sudden Paul Crabb says, I'm going to take that one, thank you very much, and coming down towards Foxhole. It's a relatively easy overtake. So Paul Crabb now back up into second place. Simon Edwards with a comfortable margin up to the front, just over a second already. But of course, that's coming down and down now that Paul Crabb's got clear air. And look at Mike Busson, he's having to weather the storm just a little bit as there's a couple of cars closing in behind James Child and Paul Clark fighting for 5th place.
Yeah, nice little battle here, forming down to 5th. We have had one incident. It was Phil Jocelyn. So let's have a look at what Phil happened to deal with. He's going over the crest of the hill. Oh, he's just gone sent up the inside. Actually,
both of them carried too much speed through Flugplatz.
Oh, I tell you what, whoever just skirted through then got away with it, didn't they, somewhat? We'll just have another quick look at that from maybe a potentially different camera angle, if it'll let me know. Slightly closer, but I think you're right, just a little bit too much speed sent by both of them. One trying to send it up the inside, another, in the form of Phil Jocelyn, trying to carry momentum on the outside. And whoever the orange car going through there, which
Michael LeMay.
Yeah, it was Michael LeMay. He did a very good job at squeezing their way through.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I want to see maybe if we can have a look on board with Michael LeMay just to see how close that came to contact. Just one final time at this incident. Thank you very much, Jack. So we see that's Martina Ward just up ahead. She gets through unscathed completely. And then look at Michael May.
Oh.
Oh, which way are the cars going? That way, that way.
Oh.
Oh, there's another spinner in front. Absolutely a massive brown trouser moment from Michael LeMay, but he keeps it going, and he's not too far back now, actually, from the aforementioned Martina Ward, but it's a lot closer now between Mike Busson and James Child.
Yeah, as we hide them behind some trees, effectively, we will try and keep flitting around the cameras to see where we've got the best sort of angles for all the action, but Mike Busson is having to defend here quite heavily as we now go into the leaves once again. A little bit of a slipstream action here. I suppose the straights and the flat-out sections are completely long enough for these radicals to actually get the slipstream effect. Not normally used to seeing that, to be honest. A lot of the straights we see at the likes of Alton Park and places like that aren't anywhere near long enough to actually have any advantage in these cars. They're just so slippery through the air, and obviously that high aerodynamic, high aero and downforce means if they get any kind of damage, they're in for a bit of an issue. One driver who's been in no issue whatsoever so far has been Simon Edwards. However, with Paul Crabb being released into second place, you called it earlier, Ed, there's a little bit more of a battle going on now.
Yeah, definitely close to one another here, this phase of the race, but for how long can Paul Crabb stay up with Simon Edwards, or for how long can Simon Edwards withstand this pressure? Speaking of pressure, look at Dan Webster and Martin Booker. Nose to tail here. It's ever so close between the pair of them, but Dan Webster running slightly wide off onto the grass. So well done to recover that. Fair play to Dan Webster as we again go behind the trees, the shrubs, the bushes of the wonderful German forest surrounding the Nordschleife. Wonderful to look at, but maybe not that close when we've got action on the circuit iRacing. Maybe that could be something to look at on the camera front, because it's nothing we can control, unfortunately, but there's a slight mistake coming through from Martin Booker. It allows Dan Webster to close that margin back down again. Car's diving down through, rear end twitching as the car loads up massively. And then coming up towards another amazing section of the circuit, the Beloff S's. And then your way through flat out all the way, then up to a right-hander that does surprisingly tighten up, as again this left-hander very, very tricky to negotiate. Then you've got the second carousel, get into the groove, send it through, hold it tight, carry the speed up, power through like we saw Martin Booker do. And now on to, well, the very, very long straight. You're going to see literally some moves being made because Simon Edwards half a second ahead rather of Paul Crabb. You can see him moving left and right trying to break the slipstream. How close is it between Dan Webster and Martin Booker as well? Oh, the cars may be topping out and not getting much of a benefit from the slipstream.
That is the problem. The Doppelgänger straight here is so long that I think they're all maxing out on their speedometers. If we go on board with Simon Edwards, he is being caught, but you can see a top speed of the rev limiter is absolutely mullering the top end of that engine. As Paul Crabb has got a touch closer, but he only gained about a tenth of a second throughout all of that sort of straight, and it's not really enough to make any kind of move because obviously these cars are so high aerodynamics and they just top out so quickly. It's not really that advantageous even here at the Nurburgring. As we're about to complete lap 1 out of the 5, and there's still some really interesting battles going on. If we're talking about side-by-side action, we're talking about Phil Glover and Michael LeMay down here. Michael LeMay we mentioned earlier because he's managed to slip through that earlier incident with Phil Jocelyn, but Phil Glover has just gotten past Michael LeMay now and into the top 10.
Yeah, good stuff from Phil Glover. But having a look at this between Martin Booker and Dan Webster, still close as ever, as like you've seen, Simon Edwards and Paul Crabb have somewhat separated from one another. So something happened to Paul Crabb here. He's around about 2 and a bit seconds away. There's damage on the rear wing, and on the side, completely damaged from Paul Crabb there. And is that going to slow him down? It definitely probably will be. And all of a sudden, Martin Booker and Dan Webster, they can see second place just up the road.
Yeah, now bear with me for this one. We're going to keep an eye on Dan Webster and Martin Booker for the next about 20 seconds. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and find, because it hasn't come up as an instant replay on my replay ticker. It hasn't come up as an event that Paul Crabb has had a big issue. So I don't think it was a crash with Simon Edwards, and I'm not even sure how he did it. It must have just been his own spin. We're going to find a replay that was near it, like an overtake, and then try and focus on Paul Crabb and see if we can just catch the moment where maybe he caught the outside Armco or something like that. But That is probably... I was looking forward to this. When I was looking at the lap times in practice, Ed, I was very much looking forward to Simon Edwards versus Paul Crabb. We haven't even mentioned the championship too much yet. We'll get onto that once the sort of the things calm down and everything. But put it this way, we've mentioned it over the past 3 meetings. Simon Edwards is impossible to beat. He's pretty much the champion. We're just going to confirm it tonight. But Paul Crabb, with the pace that he's found in this Radical recently, he was so close to Simon Edwards, and it's really gutting to see it fall away in the race like it has done.
Yeah, I think the incident that was closest to the overtake as well, just going on what you said, was probably Phil Glover overtaking Michael LeMay, and actually Paul Crabb. And on the inside, you can see there, I think he turned in a little bit too early for that final corner, and that will probably be where we see the damage accrue, is on the sort of the Armco, the little barrier on the inside that Paul Crabb just touches, turns in a little bit too early, chasing the time, chasing the rear end of Simon Edwards, and unfortunately picks up some damage. We're going to see, though, Jack, just to confirm how it happened.
Yeah, again, unfortunately, because we didn't see the proper replay, we've ended up having to look a lot further back to actually see the origin of it. So we don't want to see the whole of the Doppelgänger straight again, so keep your eyes peeled because we don't want to do this again. I might even rewind it if we don't quite catch it. But as we head down towards what ends up being the pit straight, the start-finish straight, that last corner is what you theorised, Ed, and we're getting to that last corner, and the car still looks spick and span. And he just sends too much in, and then touches the wall on the outside, doesn't he? So he took too much speed and slid the car, caught it, but it wasn't good enough before fighting back and hitting that right-hand side. Absolutely gutting.
I was slightly off. It was the corner before where he made the mistake. I thought he was going to do it through the final corner, just turned too early, clipped the apex, clipped the Armco, but no, he just carried too much speed down at the end of the dot and just straight into those final few corners. Had a four-wheel slide, tried to regain it, did regain it, but unfortunately lost out too much. You can just see Martin Booker and Dan Webster passing Paul Crabb, a very stricken and slowed up Paul Crabb, who's unfortunately not going to be finishing on the podium as it stands, with Martin Booker and Dan Webster now second and third. But Simon Edwards, class of the field, up in front. He's not really got much to worry about now.
No, and a lot of the battles up and down the field have sort of spaced themselves out as well. There's a battle between Mike Buston and Paul Clark and potentially James Child. It's nowhere near as close as the one we're seeing out on circuit at the moment, but if we do see a little bit of a change of order, I'll jump over to it, don't you worry about a thing. Right, Ed, things, I don't want to say have calmed down, but they've taken a slightly mellow 10 seconds, haven't they? So let's talk about the championship. I mentioned Simon Edwards is pretty impossible to catch. Well, on the website, what they've given us, as they disappear behind trees, huge off with Dan Webster. Just as I was about to break it down, Dan Webster absolutely sent it into the wall and behind the trees, unfortunately. Let's see if we can see a better onboard with that. Just go on. Whoa, he's already sliding there, to be honest. Let's see if we can go a little bit further back. This is as he's overtaking Paul Crabb, so we only have to wait for maybe 15 seconds here, Ed. But that's a huge incident, and that was easily the closest battle that we've got on the circuit. So we've had Simon Edwards and Paul Crabb fall by the wayside, and now we've had Martin Booker and Dan Webster fall by the wayside. As I think we're just about to go into the carousel here. He keeps it tidy for the carousel, Ed. Comes out of it cleanly enough as well. Is it just going to be a hit of the curb, maybe? Too close to it, potentially?
We're going to see. It might just be a hit of the curb, turning a bit too much into the corner. Sometimes you can get oversteer in the cars, which is a nightmare to try and deal with here on the Nordschleife foot. You can see already slightly struggling for grip, but able to negotiate and stay in behind Martin Booker. And then coming through here, curbs seem to be all right. Turns in for this next corner, high curb, avoids that one.
Oh!
And then, just a touch of the grass on corner entry. And that, unfortunately, gives him no chance to recover the car.
Yeah, I'm just going to try and... I know it looks awful. It's a bit the cardinal sin of iRacing broadcasting, but I don't want to wait for like 45 seconds to see that again. It's just a touch of the grass, isn't it? And it's such a high-speed corner, high-velocity corner. The tyres couldn't cope with it, and nor should they if they're hitting the grass, to be honest. And that is Dan Webster gone into the pit lane. Dominic Lang-Webb also didn't start this race. Paul LeMay, Phil Jocelyn, and Mike Butterson are down and pretty much out as well. So now it's Paul Crabb versus James Child, as the gap between James Child and... I'm pretty sure Paul LeMay was there at one point, and Mike Bussum seems to have disappeared as well. So this is the closest battle, and to be honest, Paul Crabb is a bit of a sitting duck here.
Yeah, he is. Unfortunately, his straight line speed is really, really hampered by this aero damage. Seems to be okay negotiating the corners. Doesn't lose out too much to James Child, but as soon as he gets onto any area of high speed, any area where you're on full throttle for an extended period of time, Paul Crabb is, like you mentioned, just a sitting duck. James Child in behind. You're going to see it now coming up towards Flugplatz. That time going down and down. James Child, it was 9/10. I can tell you it's already 8/10 of a second as they come over the crest. Send it through the right-hander. Gap now 7/10 of a second.
He's stuck in 5th gear, isn't he? You can't really get him past 5th. I know he's going uphill.
Just go up into 6th.
Yeah, but
now
I mean,
that he's got the downhill.
If you look at James Child, he'll be bouncing off the limits. And look at, he's in the red lights. And I don't think Paul Crabb is even in the red lights, is he? So he's losing top-end RPM there, which is absolutely annihilating him.
Yeah, really, really damaging for his chances this race and coming down towards Foxhole. He's going to have a downhill to help the car out, but he's going to be fighting a losing battle here, and I don't see any sense for him to fight this, as James Child is right up behind through Foxhole. Can't find a way through, of course, on the fastest areas of the circuit. Just waiting in behind, waiting for the opportunity to present itself. He can even, to be fair to himself, wait all lap until you come onto the Dottinger straight and then have a relatively easy move. But I think that there are a few more chances for James Child to get that overtake done rather sensibly.
Mike Bussum gets past Paul LeMay and Phil Jocelyn. That's owing to the fact that both Paul LeMay and Phil Jocelyn are being lapped. They're in the pits. They're not moving, basically. So Mike Bussum gets ahead of them, which I'm sure he'll be semi-pleased with. He's in the top 11 after having a bit of an off, maybe. But still not ideal for him. James Child, I don't want to say making a meal out of this. Maybe he's just biding his time. I mean, we all know that once he gets onto the Dottinger straight, it's going to be easy money, isn't it, for James Child? He's got 4.2 seconds back, so he might as well not rush.
It'll be even easier, actually, on the run up towards the carousel. Don't forget, you're flat
Very
out
true.
all the way up the hill. And, of course, the uphill is going to be where Paul Crabb struggles with that lack of top-line speed. It is definitely going to be relatively easy, I think, for James Child. Yeah. As you can see, I think Paul Crabb has made a meal of this next corner. I thought he was pulling off to let him through, but maybe not just yet. Wants to stay in the third place in the podium for as long as he can, because he knows that he'll probably be kissing it goodbye as soon as James Child passes him.
Yeah, I'm going to keep the miles per hour just on the right-hand side of your screen up for a little bit until we get onto that sort of, like you mentioned, the sort of quick sector. And here comes James Child, 148-ish miles an hour seems to be his top speed. If we look at James Child, he's touching 150. It may only be 1 or 2 extra mile an hour difference. It makes a massive difference in terms of time. So, yeah, it's these extra, I don't know, couple of 100 RPM, really, isn't it, Ed? Maybe a 200 RPM, a difference between maybe 1 and 2 miles an hour. James Child does get past, and it is in the sector that you were talking about, this sort of flat out all the way up the hill, and you hit the braking zone. And as you mentioned, I don't think Paul Crabb's really suffering through the corners, of which there are an awful lot here, obviously, at the Nordschleife. But in these aerodynamically sound radicals, there's a lot of flat out corners. They're so stuck to the road that the corners really don't feel like much, to be honest. So it sort of works with and without you. You need to have the perfect setup, and once you have the perfect setup, these radicals feel amazing around a track like the Nurburgring. But James Child, well, I thought he messed that up, and I think he has messed it up and allowed Paul Crabb back through, and that was just a clip of an apex. I was about to come onto the curbs, Ed, literally about a sentence away from going onto the curbs, because they're low slug, high aero, means plenty of flat out corners, but it can all go wrong as soon as you go an inch onto these, quite frankly, massive curbs.
Yeah, definitely. Almost, half the height of these radicals when you see them going through. They are
easily the height of the
absolutely
wheels.
Massive on board. Yeah, very, very tall, about the height of a small child, which is not what you want to be running over in any situation, is it? Those curves, absolutely lethal. You can see Paul Crabb doing a good job, even with the damage done to his car, able to carry it through the Beloff S's. Oh, that's not the Beloff S's, that's later on in the lap. This circuit just
Don't ask me.
So
You know
long,
me.
it fries your brain. So long it fries your brain sometimes. But James Child, I want to be a little bit closer coming onto the Dottinger straight. Needs to make up a little bit more time before getting that move done, which he is doing now, closing that gap down to just under half a second. Going through the second carousel now, and the Dottinger straight should be a relatively easy overtake for James Child.
You'd hope so, wouldn't it? With 0.6 of a second, he'll get a bit of slipstream assistance. Not that he'll really need it. Simon Edwards, 9.5 seconds to the good of Martin Booker, who equally is about 6.5 seconds ahead of these two battling it out. And then the next closest battle after this is the battle between Martina Ward and Phil Glover. Martina's driven very well today. But just having a look at the top speed, there we go. 154, 155 there from Paul Crabb. 161 from James Child, and if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, and the damage that is on Paul Crabb's car and sort of what he's suffering with, it's there right in your screen. And there we go, James Child from about 7 or 8 tenths back coming onto this straight goes ahead, and by the time they hit the braking zone, Ed, I imagine there'll be probably about 0.2 of a second in it. We know Paul Crabb's quite handy through the corners, and the twisty windy section of the first sector is coming up, so you never know, it might get switched back round as Phil Glover and Martina Ward are nice and close to each other now. So as we shoot backwards just to get another eye on potential overtakes, Phil Glover does get past on Martina Ward, who, as I mentioned, looks like a purple Spider-Man in that car, doesn't it? Absolutely brilliant. I love that livery. It is awesome. If I have a Radical, that's what I want it to look like.
Does look very nice, doesn't it? Martina Ward's paint job has come back up to this
racing.
fight. Very, very Jacko racer. Yeah, I was about to say very, very Jacko indeed. As we see, Martin Booker and James Child again inseparable. Nose to tail. Speaking of Jacko, I know you're going to be in the commentary box here on Absolute Sim Racing in, well, not too long, are you, for another race upcoming. We're going to be talking about various things throughout the evening as we are on to, I think, the final couple of laps.
Penultimate lap already. I mean, it's a good 12 minutes off being finished, but we are on the penultimate lap.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some got something coming up on Absolute Sim Racing, don't we? In the BSR 3 hours of brands. We
do indeed, yeah. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure if it's going on the ASR Absolute Sim Racing YouTube page. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't had the chat with Dan yet, but if anybody out there is used to watching the BSR on ASR, the British Sim Racing MX5 Cup, obviously, which Ed covers with Dan on Absolute Sim Racing on a Tuesday night. Yeah, I'll be doing the charity race on a Monday, streamed. I know it's streamed on my Facebook page, on potentially YouTube as well, on Jacko Racing. You can find it on. Obviously, be in the booth with Chaz Draycott, our commentary friend Ed from Sim Racers World. I know you'll be racing in. Have you decided what you're racing in, the MX5 or the TCR?
I might be running solo, you know, and I might do it in the TCR. Just going to see how it works, see how it fares. Part of me wants to try the Mazda out, but it will be a while since I drove the TCR. And actually, the last time I drove that car was before I got started on the BSR Mazdas, my first ever coverage duty. I was racing in the Sim Racers World TCR League. It was run on a Tuesday evening, and then got a call saying, "Oh, do you want to do some try out some commentating?" And the rest was history. So it'd be good to get the old TCR out again, just for old time's sake.
I couldn't get it past the corner in Donington, to be honest. I was awful running the TCR car, but to be honest, that actually reminds me, it's a 3-hour race. We're obviously supporting the British Marshals Club, the British Motorsport Marshals Club, I think it's called. And yeah, raising money to help those guys out, because obviously they're all voluntary, aren't they, Ed? And they are basically the saviours of our sport. Without them, we wouldn't stand a chance in going real racing, and without real racing, nobody would be quite as hooked on sim racing and things like that, are they? So, yeah, all the entries are pretty much going to go on to the British Marshals Club, and then any extra donations that are made on the race, which happens on Monday on Jacko Racing. The race starts at 8 PM for 3 hours, and it's really bad of me, Ed, but I can't remember what track we're going to. Can you remember what track we're at?
Brands Hatch, the full GP circuit of Brands, yes.
Yeah, I thought it was, but I was all of a sudden thinking, is it Le Mans? I don't know why, I just had Le Mans in my head. But yeah, Brands Hatch GP, which, as we know, is pretty sensational for GT racing and multi-class racing as well. And there's not a massive difference between the TCRs and the MX-5s, is there? But enough, hopefully, to make it interesting.
No, there's definitely not the biggest of gaps. I was doing a little bit of practice, got my times to a 1:32. MX5s were doing about 1:39s, 1:38. So that time's only around about 6 or 7 seconds difference, which isn't a lot, but still is enough for multi-class racing over the course of, and even
Well,
of course
3
Brands
hours.
Indy isn't the longest of circuits. So again, that's where all of those different things factor together. It should be a very good evening if you are watching this in the radicals and thinking, you know what, I might fancy giving it a go. Just send me a message on Discord, Ed May, or wherever you can find me, or Jack Oliphant, to be fair, Jack Racing, and we'll see if we can get you all sorted out, because I think entries are still open
Oh, yeah.
as it stands.
Entries absolutely open. £10 per team. As I said, it all goes to the British Marshalling Club, as Paul Crabb sends a little bit wide through there. Yeah, all goes to the British Marshalling Club, MX5 or TCR. A big grid mounting up. I think there's about 18, 19 MX5 so far and about 13 TCRs. So, and a few unconfirmed as well. I know they've been chatting to a few people about getting a few extra in. Happening this Monday, 6th of December. So please do enter if you want to enter. Drop a comment in the YouTube chat if you want to maybe get forwarded to it. But yeah, just maybe tag me and Ed in the Discord if you're watching and maybe you're taking part in this and you want to get involved. Anyway, that's enough probably about what's going on Monday night. Obviously, this is one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, for the Nurburgring. Ed, as a season finale, it always seems to just end up being a bit of a gap and a procession. And I know procession sounds like such a harsh word, but realistically, since we lost the fight for first place and since we lost the fight for what was third place at the time, it's gone a little bit stale, hasn't it, really? Everybody's just trying to get around as quickly as possible and survive more than anything.
There's the touch, yeah, but Phil Glover is definitely making up some making up some places. He's already overtook Martin Ward on the lap prior, and now on this lap, he's setting his sights firmly on Ray Peasley. So there's still a battle about to come through. It's just a matter of, can Ray Peasley hold on? He has got damage on the side of his car, so that might make it a lot easier for Phil Glover coming down the Dottinger Straight here. Yeah,
in fact, the dashboard's still on the right-hand side, so Phil Glover getting up to about 160, Ray Peasley 154. So it's like we were seeing before with Paul Crabb and James Child. Peasley limited, essentially, at the moment, as Phil Glover goes past about 3 or 4 mile an hour up on the other driver. So Peasley will have to accept his fate. 7th place still isn't a bad result. And I suppose we're on the white flag lap, so just before we finish this, we really do need to go about the championship. I've tried to explain it a couple of times, but people keep appearing with good races and crashes. It's very rude of them, isn't it? Simon Edwards, 372 points the good. To be honest, he's pretty much been the champion for the last 4 or 5 rounds. He's been and attended every single race, I believe, in this championship, as Peasley looks interested in getting past Phil Glover. Paul Crabb, who we've mentioned quite a lot so far this evening, and obviously was 2nd place on the grid and looked like he was fighting for race lead here, has to settle for 2nd, but he is nearly 100 points down. So even if he beaten Simon Edwards here on the road, and Simon Edwards had crashed and DNF'd, it wasn't going to change anything. But Paul Crabb will probably be 2nd place because John McHutchinson in 3rd, who is 260 points, so 19 points down. John isn't here. He hasn't been here for a lot of this championship. When he's turned up, he tends to win. But when he hasn't turned up, obviously, he's not going to count any points. Mike Busson, where's he on the track? Well, I've seen him come off earlier on. Yeah, 11th place. He's currently in 4th in the championship. 2 points behind John McHutchinson. So as long as he finishes here, he's probably going to jump John McHutchinson and jump into 3rd place. Martin Booker, 9 points behind John McHutchinson. 5th place in the championship, and he is currently 2nd. So he will definitely jump John McHutchinson, and probably will jump Mike Busson as well, actually. So Martin Booker will probably jump up to 3rd. Mike Busson will probably stay where he is in 4th. And John McHutchinson will drop down to 5th. Dominic Lang-Webb is 6th in the championship, but hasn't taken the start, so won't be improving at all. And then you're looking at Graham Brown, who unfortunately isn't here either. So we have had some drop-off, Ed, throughout the season. That does tend to happen a little bit when we get to sim racing, and sometimes, you know, real life just takes over. We saw it a lot with lockdown, didn't we? We had massive grids in every single series, And then as lockdown started to ease and people were going back to their daily lives and not just doing quizzes and sim racing, we started to see a bit of a drop-off halfway through some seasons.
Yeah, we do. It's just a natural fact that sometimes drivers outside of the championship fight decide that they don't really want to take part anymore, which is fair enough. But of course, that does mean that the grids get smaller and smaller. We don't see as much of the action, unfortunately. But as we can see at the moment, as it stands, Paul Crabb. Oh, I was about to say trying to close in, but
He was
with
pushing
damage, it was always going to be difficult to overtake, pushing a bit too hard there, and just seems to get a little bit more damage on his car. Thankfully, this is the final lap for Paul Crabb, so we'll have to guide it through. And Paul Clark is, to be fair to him, rapidly approaching, only about 4.5 seconds back. So there could be a change of position, and there probably will be, because look at how much damage there is on Paul Crabb's car as Phil Glover and Ray Peasley continue to duke it out. Ray Peasley actually doing a great job to hang with it, even with damage.
I was going to say, I think I was going to give big props to Paul Crabb for having a 10-second gap between himself and Paul Clark before he chucked it off with that damage. And Ray Peasley, as we mentioned before, we were sort of quite convinced he was just going to get dropped by Phil Glover as soon as the move was done. But Peasley's really come in strong, and as soon as he gets onto a flat-out straight like he's pretty much on now, this flat-out section, he's going to suffer a little bit, and the Doppinger straight, obviously, he'll probably really struggle, but he's done a good job. This is the final lap. Realistically, if you get the car ahead, you get track position, you never know what might happen.
Yeah, it's all about just getting the track position onto the Nordschleife and just hanging on for dear life. If you got damage, of course, down the straights, you are going to be a sitting duck, but it shows even with damage, drivers can keep up with it. You've obviously got what's fighting as Paul Clark, we've just seen now, overtaking Paul Crabb for 4th place. So I'm going to see how this happened, and I think it was the damage. Paul Crabb staying well out of the way, not wanting to get involved, not wanting to throw himself into the mix, which is full credit to him. Great stuff from Crabb there. And I think we'll be seeing Paul after what was a good start to the race. Unfortunately, occurring damage. Nordschleife was very unforgiving towards him, and he's going to be dropping down to finish in 5th place. Just saying that we're aware as we watch this fight between Ray Peasley and Phil Glover, where aware is Simon Edwards, because I think this is the final lap and he shouldn't be too
it's about to go
far away.
Dotting just straight, I believe. So he's just going around one of the final carousels. You can see on the top right of your screen on the broadcast a little track map I've had up for the full thing, just to get an appreciation of how big and the scale of the Nurburgring is, to be honest, and the difference in the cars as well. I mean, if we're looking at, we're not looking at game, we're looking at gap, sorry. This battle we're looking at here is nearly a full minute behind Simon Edwards, so it's absolutely huge. But that probably does mean that we'll be able to have a look at Simon Edwards crossing the finish line, and then we can shoot back to Phil Glover and Ray Peasley and see how it gets sorted on the Dottinger straight. But it's been a dominating event here by Simon Edwards. To be honest, it's been a dominating series by Simon Edwards. As soon as he got the ball rolling, as soon as he started pushing in those quick times in practice, all of a sudden qualifying became a breeze, especially when John McCutcheon wasn't around, and the races just fallen away. He's just picked up win after win after win, and he's finishing the season off with another win here. The champion, Simon Edwards, for the UK and Ireland Radical Race Series Season 4. I'm sure he'll probably do a little bit of a donut at some point, but we want to focus a little bit on what's going on behind. Martin Booker's going to come across the line to take 2nd place. I'll keep an eye on that battle between Phil Glover and Ray Peasley, don't worry. But Martin Booker is very pleased, I'm sure, with a 2nd place. James Child, a couple of seconds back, but he's going to take home a 3rd after getting past Paul Crabb, and then obviously Paul Crabb, then we get it off. Paul Clark, a respectable 4th, overtaking Paul Crabb on that final lap, and the driver who's had a lot of damage and I think might not even finish in the top 5 here, as Phil Glover flies past him in the final couple of corners, and so does Ray Peasley. So Phil Glover will take 5th as long as he doesn't chuck it into the wall here. We've seen it happen, specifically with Paul Crabb, but he comes across the line. Phil Glover to round out that top 5 with Ray Peasley.
Brilliant stuff from Phil.
It actually is, isn't it? With Ray Peasley in 6th place. And then Paul Crabb just about crawls over the line.
Tell you what, that race from Phil Glover was brilliant. We saw him make moves all race long, didn't he? Climbing up through the order. He only actually made up 4 places across the race, but tell you what, he was definitely one of the stars of the show. We saw him probably more often than any other drivers because he was quite often a lot closer to the other drivers who made the moves on track rather than from drivers crashing out potentially. Looking at Mike Busson as well, got a little while for him to come across the line. Then there's even drivers even further back actually. Phil Jocelyn, Paul LeMay, all the way down halfway through the lap. So we might have to wait a little while before we can get the confirmed results up on your screens, but we can still, of course, Jack, I think go through with post-race interviews.
Absolutely, yeah.
While we wait for the drivers.
If there's anybody in the interview waiting room, we will certainly drag them in whilst we're waiting for specifically Paul LeMay in 13th, who's only halfway around the lap to come in. So if anybody out there is interested in the interview, specifically Simon Edwards and Martin Booker and James Child, then by all means jump in and we can have a chat to them.
So Mike Busson rounds out the final corner, brings the season to a close in 11th place here at the Nordschleife. Then there are just a couple more cars on track to wait for. Phil Jocelyn, Paul LeMay. A lot of damage there on the front end of Phil Jocelyn's car, and I think Paul LeMay might be in a similar state, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they've done well, to be fair. The majority of these drivers, I think the biggest thing I can say about tonight is it was self-made mistakes, it seems, that sort of have caused people to have damage. There was no sort of dirty driving. It was all very clean, wasn't it, Ed? Which is everything we like to see. And it's quite hard to be clean around the Nordschleife. It's narrow, it's twisty, it's windy, it's all those sorts of things. It basically sets everyone up for a bit of a crash if you attempt an overtake or anything like that. So they've done really well to sort of control themselves to the best of their abilities and not end up flying into each other, to be honest. But I do see that we've got a driver come in to have a chat with us. So I'm going to bring in our race winner and champion of the UK and Ireland Season 4, Simon Edwards. Simon, a huge congratulations. You must be buzzing with that one.
Yeah, can you hold a minute? Got Mercedes on the other line, one sec.
Okay, yeah, I'll tell you, mute yourself up and you can come in and interrupt me when you're ready.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I don't know. I've done that, haven't I?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's you've after Paul Crabb ended up having that incident, because obviously the qualifying, well, it wasn't qualifying, but it's practice time. They were so close between you guys. Was there a sort of a hope that this one might turn into a bit of a night to remember in terms of the overall race?
Yeah, I thought that Paul was going to stick with me there, but he didn't. I didn't actually see him go off. I just saw him there 1 second, and then he wasn't. So you saw what actually happened. I don't know actually what happened.
Well, I think what we saw was we had to do a couple of replays to make sure, but I think what we saw was he just sort of basically sent too much speed through, I think, the penultimate corner, and then ended up overcorrecting and sliding into the pit lane wall, basically, and that was his right side damage, and all of a sudden he had about 4 miles an hour less than everybody else on the straights, which obviously didn't help, and then he pretty much totaled it halfway through the race, unfortunately, as well. So he's dropped back down to 7th, but did mean that you were sort of given a nice easy coast through the German countryside after that.
Yeah, but it gets stressful when you're on your own.
I can imagine. I can't get a lap out the Nurburgring even in an MX-5. So
yeah, on lap 4 I was taking it too easy, and I fell off the end of the first carousel and went right over the curb, and I was tobogganing down the curb. I thought, oh, I better start concentrating, so I did the last lap properly. Only a second difference between pace. I'm not talking about going really slow, but I got my attention and just hot lapped the last lap, just to make sure I didn't do that sort of thing again.
I was going to say, I think realistically you had about a 20-second gap, if not probably slightly. Well, it was 18.7-second gap, actually, in the end, between yourself and Martin Booker. Over a 5-lap period, that's fairly impressive by anyone's standards, I'd say. You obviously came, you saw, and you conquered for the championship. Obviously, a few drivers didn't turn up for every single round, but consistency is key in any motorsport or in any sport, essentially. Are you going to be back racing again next season? Do you reckon?
Yeah, I'll definitely come back next season. I might go for another championship as well for something a bit quicker, maybe Lotus 79 type league. I might go for as well. Now that I've got used to downforce cars again.
I was going to say the downforce of the radicals really is quite extreme, isn't it? So jumping into an LMP or something like that might be quite interesting, or doing any VLN rounds, because you clearly have good pace around the Nurburgring. So it would be a good stretch of sort of your abilities to maybe just take that leap and maybe do some endurance racing.
Yeah, then you've got teammates that you don't want to let down.
Very true. Yeah, that is always the pressure.
Yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, I want to do at least a 24-hour race in the near future. So that's not out of the question.
Well, it would be awesome to keep up to date with what you're getting on with as well, especially. But Simon, big congratulations for not only winning this race, but winning the championship as well. If I was you, I'd go find a trophy somewhere and take a nice podium photo on top of your bed or something with some champagne to finish off the night.
Yeah, I'm going to celebrate with a yogurt.
Oh, can't beat it. If it's a crunch corner, you can't beat it. Absolutely awesome. Simon, big thank you, and we'll speak to you next time.
All right, thank you.
And that was Simon Edwards, and I think we're going to be able to bring in second place man Mike Booker. I'm just going to bring him in whilst reading out the race results. So, Mike, I know you're in the commentary room, but just give me a quick second while I rinse off the results and confirm it for everyone, because Simon Edwards took home the race victory and that championship as well. Martin Booker, who you might be able to hear just with a fan on potentially in the background, came home in second place. It's all right. James Child.
Let me switch it off.
It's all right. James Child rounded out the top three, with Paul Clark in fourth, fifth being Phil Glover, sixth Ray Peasley, seventh Paul Crabb in the end, unfortunately for him. Martina Ward in eighth, with Michael LeMay in ninth. James Bird rounded out the top 10 with Mike Busson in 11th, and then Phil Jocelyn in 12th, Paul LeMay in 13th, and then unfortunately a couple of drivers who didn't end up finishing the race and were a couple of laps down. Dan Webster and then Dominic Langweb never actually even took the start, so which was a big shame, obviously. So there is your confirmed order, and we'll have a chat now to Martin. Apologies for making you turn your fan off there, Martin. I'm sure you're quite hot after that one.
It's hot in here.
Oh, I can imagine the hard work around this Nurburgring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's hard enough to say, let alone race round it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, and you were in quite a heavy fight, especially for the first couple of laps, weren't you? With I'm struggling to remember who it was with. It was Paul Crabb.
It was, yeah.
Dan
I got past Paul, and then he immediately came past me. I'm not sure it was much of a fight with Dan. I think he was just waiting for me to get out of the way so he could come past. Those three guys are a good few seconds quicker a lap round here than me, but. Yeah, then I looked in my rear view and he was gone, so I still don't know what actually happened.
Well, to Paul Crabb, do you mean?
No, both actually.
Yes, because Dan Webster went off as well, didn't he?
Yeah. Paul
I
said
do
he
remember.
binned it on the last corner, and then Dan was chasing me, and then I looked up and he'd gone. So I think then he disconnected. So I'm not sure. Not sure what happened to him.
I think he just sent too much speed through. I can't remember which corner because there's like 3,000 around this curve. But exactly. But he just sent it through and touched the grass. So he was really committing to the corners, and I think he just touched the grass on the outside. And obviously the car gave way and threw him into a wall, unfortunately. So and that was the end of his race. And it is small mistakes like that around here, isn't it? That really do make an absolutely massive difference.
Yeah, definitely.
But obviously you mastered it, coming home in second place. And I believe, I just want to have a quick look. I'm only sort of guessing here, but I think that means you're promoted to third place in the championship because Mike Busson came quite far down tonight. And obviously John McCutcheon hasn't turned up. So I think you've been promoted to third in the championship. So you must be pretty pleased with a podium in the race and a podium in the championship.
Nice, yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, if that sticks, is that with all the drop weeks and everything?
It's
into
whatever's on the
account?
website, basically, and
Whatever's on the right. Okay.
yeah. So that's all I get given. So you were
Okay.
9 points behind John McCutchinson, and you were 7 points behind Mike
Cool.
Busson. So, being the fact that they've both had either DNSs or bad rounds, I think you're pretty safe to think that you've been jumping up.
Nice. Happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. Will you be jumping back next season for more action here at the UK and Ireland Radical Race Series?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can't wait.
Do you know if there's what the plan is for next season as well? Because I'm just a lowly commentator. I don't get told what's cracking on here. But is it follow the... Well, it does follow the iRacing seasons. Does that mean you're only going to have a week off?
Yeah, we normally do something silly for week 13 and then get straight back on it. So yeah, as you say, we follow the normal schedule. I've got no idea what next season looks like actually, so I'm not sure where we're racing, but yeah, looking forward to that. Can't wait to get started.
Well, I'm sure you'll probably be hoping that it's the Nurburgring, to be honest, because it seems like it suited you, and you seem pretty consistent as well, which is the biggest compliment you can possibly face at the Nurburgring. So, congratulations. Is there anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to, Martin? I'm really annoyed that I forgot to ask Simon Edwards that as I let him go, but we'll ask you anyway, Martin.
A shout out to you guys for the excellent coverage. Once again, Chris, Dom, and MJ for organising. A shout out to Simon as well this week because he's been helping me with some computer issues. And finally, a shout out to Dave's goldfish.
Oh, Dave's goldfish. I thought Dave's mum was going to get a shout out there, but apparently we're ignoring it this week. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. It's the finale. We'll do something different. Mike, big thank you for jumping into the commentary box, and hopefully, Martin. Apologies. Thank you very much for jumping into the commentary box, and hopefully we'll speak to you another time.
Thanks, Jacko. Take care, man.
And that was Martin Booker. Apologies there, Martin, for getting your name. I'm not even sure what I said, but I must have got it wrong. So I do apologise about that. It's curse of the commentator, unfortunately, when you start pressing all these different buttons to get things up and running. But there we go. A big thank you from me and Ed, who's had to shoot off slightly early during the interviews there. But it has been an absolute pleasure being your host for this season. I do apologise that we haven't been here for absolutely every single round, but luckily the fantastic commentators and broadcasters at Absolute Sim Racing have been managing to cover this through the series. So from me, a massive thank you to the Radical Race Series and to Absolute Sim Racing and to the organisers that have played such a big part in putting the series together. And obviously a big well done to all the drivers who were getting involved as well. It's been a pleasure being the commentator for this series. Hopefully we're back in a couple of weeks' time for more UK and Ireland Radical Race Series Season 5. But from me, Jack Oliphant, and on behalf of Ed May, we'll bid you adieu. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, follow, share, whatever you want to do. I'm not in charge of you. And we'll hopefully see you next time. Good night.